I really want people to actually understand what it is as it is now. And so the forethought dialectic is about just boiling down to as close as we can to what we're trying to communicate. And that starts by doing some definitions of words that are really important to us. We don't really have the same definitions for words. We have one word and then we think it's the same thing. And I say tree, and then there's a deciduous tree in your brain, and there's like a coniferous tree in my brain, and we think we're talking about the same thing. So I think that it is very important to understand Regen Network is just to understand what a carbon credit is foundationally. And know what that is. If you don't know what that is, then it's going to be hard to understand. What is a carbon credit?
Carbon credits are a system whereby people are monitoring carbon emissions and carbon reductions and placing a price on the negative externality of carbon emissions and a price on carbon removals or avoided emissions, and creating a market so that people who are polluting or emitting carbon can purchase carbon offsets to balance our human carbon economy. There are two different sort of sectors of the carbon credit world. One is the compliance world, in which a nation state or a group of nation states basically places a regulation on the amount of carbon emissions that industry can make, and then people can trade the right to emit and can purchase agreed upon or regulated carbon offsets from regulated providers. And then there's voluntary carbon markets, in which it's sort of a similar apparatus, but there's no regulatory oversight or enforced cap and trade. Instead, by and large, you have companies in the voluntary carbon markets basically creating science-based targets for themselves that mimic things happening at the UN and other levels, where they're agreeing to carbon reductions and then they're voluntarily offsetting in order to make up the difference for what they can't reduce. A couple of different...
Just let me pause for a second. So that's going to be a lot of... I have to actually cut up your words because I want both sides of the brain to understand it. The part is the processing sound and to be able to read it and make it visual and make it really so people are receiving the information through more than one just means, right? Just like a glossary, like how it would be in an index.
So carbon credits are units of account that represent carbon reductions or avoided emissions. And they're a way of placing a price on carbon in our economy.
Perfect. Eco-credits go way beyond that. What's a simple answer of eco-credit? And then do a long answer, and I'll just cut that into another part.
Eco-credits are a concept that healthy ecosystems provide services and goods to the greater human economy, or really the lesser human economy, and that we can value those goods and services that those healthy ecosystems are producing as a credit, so that people who are stewarding those ecosystems get paid for the healthy functioning of the ecosystem.
That's great. Did you just want to unleash and just let through a bunch of thoughts about eco-credits right off the bat?
So some of the categories of eco-credits that are already emerging into today's economy include biodiversity credits, water quality credits, water quantity credits, of course, carbon credits, which we were talking about before. I think you could think of eco credits as matching ecological debt. So we could think that our economy goes into ecological debt as we extract value from ecosystems, and we can service that debt by paying for eco credits to incentivize and reward ecological health and stewardship to balance the harm with regeneration.
Yeah, and I think that's why I honed in on eco-credit as this sort of fundamental unit that you need to understand the power behind the way that Regen Network is organized. The next phrase I want you to define is ecological state machine.
So the idea of an ecological state machine is that we can create a networked consensus about ecological state that allows us to produce eco-credits and value them accurately.
Define ecological state.
Yeah. So ecological state is flows and function of an ecosystem.
Mhm.
And in the context of a state machine, monitored and tracked in a digital form.
Okay. Define state machine.
A state machine is another way of saying a blockchain, or any system that maintains a sense of or a sense is the wrong word. Any system that maintains state.
Mhm.
So it's sort of, and because it's a machine, right? Humans maintain state. Like my body, my corporeal body, I'm maintaining myself by eating, and then I maintain a body. The biosphere maintains statefulness. So does a blockchain, right?
Mhm.
People running mining machines maintain the statefulness of the Bitcoin network. People
Mhm.
running validator nodes in a proof of stake network like Regen Ledger maintain the statefulness of the blockchain.
Mhm. Okay. So, what is an ecological asset to you?
Ecological assets are bringing a positive economic value
Mhm.
to living capital, to the emergent value of the relationships between species in an ecosystem. So common ecological assets are the carbon that's stored in a forest,
Mhm.
or biodiversity and the number of different interactions between different species
Mhm.
in the rainforest, for instance.
Resilience.
Yeah. So resilience is a description of resilience is a description of the attributes of how durable the statefulness is of a system. Like how easy is it to change or hard is it to change? If it's hard, it's resilient. If it's
Mhm.
easy to change, it's not resilient. Or
Mhm.
and oftentimes baked into that is an assumption of health, not just change.
Mhm.
So like degradation versus regeneration. Um, if a system is going to be heavily impacted and start to degrade very quickly, it's not very resilient. If it could be impacted by some disturbance and maintain its state and even bounce back and become healthier, it's resilient or even anti-fragile. And so there's fragility, resilience, anti-fragility. Those are three different terms with different meanings.
Can you define intersubjective verification?
Intersubjective verification is when we work in a community, understanding that any agent in that community is only able to see from a particular perspective, to attest and share their perspective to form a larger, closer to objective understanding of reality or a question at hand.
Mhm. Um, okay, I'm going to give you a constellation of terms that I want you to define in term because they're related, but I think people have trouble understanding the distinction. The four words are regeneration, conservation, sustainability, and permaculture.
Regeneration is an increase in the evolutionary capacity and capability of a system. Sustainability is the maintenance of capacities or capabilities in a system.
Mm-hmm.
Conservation, I think, resonates with sustainability. You're conserving state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and permaculture is a design science and art with a set of ethics and principles to allow people to design agroecological systems that meet human needs while increasing ecological health or regenerating ecological health. Sorry. I should say different schools of permaculture, some aim to regenerate or improve ecological health. Some may actually aim to sustain or conserve ecological
Okay.
health. Just to
Okay.
say that permaculture could be applied from a paradigm of sustainability and conservation or a paradigm of regeneration.
Mm-hmm. So the word regen itself has become a meme that has become tied to a whole lot of things. What is just regen?
Regen is short for regeneration. It's a way that people identify, hey, I'm a regen instead of a degen. It's kind of becoming a culture. I don't know, regen punk,
Mm-hmm.
sort of adjacent to solar punk. It's a currency and governance token for Regen Network. It's become I guess, an adjective or associated with many different businesses and ventures. I recently saw a VC called Regen Ventures, and there's Regen Farmers, and there's Regen all sorts of things. I think generally it's sort of ease of use as a shorthand term for regeneration or regenerative, and maybe it's starting to lead towards some coherent ideology like regenerationism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead to one of the questions before I go through the predictions and the statements and the reflections, which is, what is the distinction between the Regen Registry, the Regen Ledger, the Regen Marketplace, Regen, the $, and the Regen Network?
Regen Network is the whole. It's a community of actors who are dedicated to regenerating ecological health and regenerating the symbolic heart of our economy to realign ecological health and economic health.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Regen Network. Regen Ledger is a public proof of stake blockchain that creates the state machine that brings together Regen Network into a single digital entity. Regen Registry is a specific functionality around registering ecological data standards, methodologies for generating eco-credits, and the process of assuring quality of ecological claims and minting of ecological assets and credits. Regen Marketplace is the peer-to-peer marketplace that allows people to directly list in a disintermediated way the ecological credits and assets that they're generating so that they can sell them directly to each other, to peers. I did network, ledger, registry, and marketplace. Regen, $, Regen.
Yeah,
So Regen is a token, digital token that allows the holder of that token to stake it and secure Regen Ledger and participate in governance. It's also one of the currencies that you can buy and sell eco credits with. And the community may come up with other novel ideas for the use of Regen in the future.
Yeah. And then there's also I believe the short name is actually R&D, which is just moved to be a nonprofit. Is that correct? That does
R&D is a public benefit corporation.
Okay.
So a public benefit corporation, first I'll define public benefit corporation, and then I'll talk about R&D. So public benefit corporation is when you expand the bylaws of a normal corporation to include specific public benefit outcomes that the executives of that company will be held accountable to try to achieve and to report on in a yearly basis in the same way that they report on their financial earnings. So R&D, or Regen Network Development Public Benefit Corp, is a company which is right around 35 people, which develops software such as Regen Ledger, Regen Marketplace, Regen Registry, and does science about how to support the creation of new eco credits into the system.
And it is through this that my work has been funded recently. It's through this organization. Give me a second.
While you're thinking about that, I could also say it's also important. Another actor in Regen Network that's important to talk about is Regen Foundation, which is a 501c3 entity that's governed by Regen Consortium, which is a group of entities and there's a board, and it is responsible for ensuring that ecosystems through rights of nature, land stewards, indigenous people, and scientists have a significant stake in governing Regen Network that can't be bought on the market, but instead can be granted or endowed to them to participate in creating and governing the network and embedding it into a social and cultural context so that it's not just a speculative system.